Good afternoon, welcome to Meets Rod Shop. I'm Jason. Today I've got my 1971 Dodge Dart Swinger back in the shop. It's got a 318 Magnum with a 46 RH transmission in it, and what the problem we have today is we've got a leaky power steering pump. So this isn't really going to work for you if you have a stock V-belt style pump on an older engine, but if you have the Magnum style engine, then this will work for you. So I'm going to detail pulling the pump off the block, putting it on the bench, yanking it apart, and throwing a new pump in there, and then putting it back together. So we'll go ahead and we'll get you in here pretty close and take a look. All right, let's get it done. First things first, we're going to go ahead and we're going to loosen up this tensioner so we can get the serpentine belt off. So it's a 15 millimeter wrench. Just pry on the tensioner and then let it back off, and your belt's off. Remember your routing for when you go to put it back on. Next thing what we have to do is there's 4 bolts right here. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, and that holds the pump to the block. Don't forget we've got to disconnect those hoses first. So on this one I'm using the stock style power steering box on this. So I've got an and fitting. If I had to guess, it's a 9/16, maybe 5/8, and then I've got the press-on return hose. So we'll go ahead and we'll just get those disconnected and yank that off. One thing I want to add is you could go ahead and you could pull the cap and suck all the fluid out. I'm just going to go ahead and let it drain on the ground. I stuck a piece of pig mat underneath there to soak up all the fluid. And on my fitting, it is a 5/8 fitting. She will seep a little bit, so just make sure to clean up everything afterwards. That way you're not getting fluid all over your headers, letting it burn down or anything. All right, so I've got the fittings disconnected. I'm going to probably jam a punch in the return line so it doesn't leak all over. All right, and then my bolts holding the pump to the block look to be just standard 5/8 bolts. I'm not sure what they came from the factory. I just know that's what's holding mine on. Okay, my bad. On my setup, it's a 9/16 bolt. Gravity works. Ding, fries are done. Right. Pump is loose. Let's go ahead and grab a hold of it. She's a little heavy. And just snake her on out. If you can find a way. Man, this thing is heavy. All right, that's all it takes. Now throw her on the bench. And boy, if I look like I'm sweating, I am. I tell you, I live in the Atlanta area, and if you're a fat, out of shape old man like me, boy, this heat just kills you. One thing I'm going to do, of course, is I'm going to soak this pump down pretty good. She's been leaking for quite some time, and she's nasty, so we're just going to go ahead and soak her down with a little bit of brake clean. You will need a special tool for this. I am using the OEM 25298. I think any parts store should have it, but two half collars here that go around the power steering pump pulley. Then you get this mandrel that also is captured in that half-piece, two-piece mandrel, and then the collar goes over it there. What that does is that then you drive the screw in against the pump shaft instead of the pump itself, so you're not destroying the shaft. Don't want to destroy that shaft, kids. So what you do is you take your two pieces of the mandrel, the adapter, you slide it around. There's a little groove on the front of the pulley there, so as you can see it's kind of clamped on like that. I'll try and get a better picture of this for you. Then you slide that collar over, and that's it. You're ready to pull this this pulley off. So what you do is you hold this inner nut, the bigger nut, you hold that with a wrench, then you just go ahead and turn the stud and it'll pull that pulley right off so you can get the pump off the mount. All right, since I can't seem to find the right wrench to fit it, I'm going to grab the old metric Swedish nut lathe here, and we'll go ahead and start cranking on this bad boy. All right, as you can see me chasing it across the table, I would suggest putting it in a vise to do that, but it's off, so then you just go ahead and pull the collar off, your tool comes out. All right, then to get the pump off of the bracket, it's a 15 millimeter. There's 4 bolts. The pump should come off. And you want to make note, there are 2 different size bolts. The smaller bolt come out of the, when you're looking at the pump, the lower right hand side. As it sits in the car, it would be the lower driver's side. All right, to get the reservoir off, go ahead and pull your pressure line off, and then there's a stud with like a nut on there on the back, and then there's a regular bolt on the back. Go ahead and pull those off. Once you pull the line off, the big nut that it was screwed into is a 1-inch nut. Don't lose the fittings that come out of it, and my kit did come with new O-rings. There are O-rings that you have to change on this. Remember which way this sits in there when you pull it. So the little shuttle valve, the spring rides on that and it goes into the pump spring first. The nut with the stud is looks like it's an 11/16. Now that should allow the reservoir to come off the back of the pump. How, I don't know. It may take a little persuasion. There you have it. There's your old pump. You can go ahead and circle can it. Might want to clean out your reservoir while you're in there, get any trash that's in there out. You want to pay special attention to the sealing surface on the lip where the pump rides. Sometimes it can be marred. Clean it up real good, wipe it down. If you use brake cleaner like I do, the paint will come off. But that's alright, this ain't a show car. One thing you want to be careful of with your new pump is I do have 2 pump plugs that are in mine that have to come out. Don't just jam this thing together, because you ain't going to be working too well if you don't take these out. There you go. All right, on my new pump, it did come with that plug in the back, so we're going to go ahead and take that out. Take some transmission fluid or power steering pump fluid, whatever you got. There's enough coming out of this that I can rub all over this seal here. Go ahead and orientate your pump in the correct location. Make sure it lines up real good, because these things, once you get them in, they're hard to line up. And then just press it on in there. And this one is off already. All right. Go ahead and put your pump studs back in. All right, now that the studs are on, that are holding the reservoir on, you can go ahead and put your shuttle valve in there. Again, spring first, then the shuttle valve behind it. And then mine's already got a new O-ring on it, but we'll go ahead and compare it to the old one. Go ahead there and get it started. All right, the new pump's on the reservoir. It's time to go ahead and we're going to pull this blue cap where the line goes. All right, now that we've got the reservoir tightened back down, I've got the fittings back in there. I've got the stud and the bolt holding the reservoir on there. I'm going to go ahead and hook my line back up. Remember, as I said before, the small bolt would go in what would be the driver's side lower hole, or when you're looking from the front of the pump, the lower right-hand hole. All right, now it's time to put the pulley on. So make sure, because if you put this pulley on backwards, you'll never get it back off. You got to make sure that groove that you put the puller on before is facing out. And then your tool should have come with a tool that, excuse me, obviously it's a tool, I'm a tool. The tool should also come with a second setup like this that has it's a big chunk of metal that pushes against the front of the pulley, and then you've got a nut here that you'll turn. So what happens is the long bolt will thread into the pump, and then you'll hold that long bolt and you'll turn this other nut as it basically drives the pulley on there. Make sure, this is like when you get older, you need lots of lube. Lube the hell out of it. All right, I have lubed my shaft, and I'm going to go ahead and drive this pulley on. So you thread the bolt in as far as it'll go. And now I'm going to turn the smaller nut here as it drives the pulley on. Try and center the pulley as best as you can prior to starting it. Give it a better chance of going on right. All right, once the nut stops spinning and you can feel really good tension on there, you'll check to see that the pump still moves freely, which it does. You'll look to see you got a little bit of an air gap back behind the pulley in the face of the mount. Go ahead, undo your bolt. All right, she's ready to put back on the car now. Before putting it back on the car, you may want to take some brake cleaner and spray off that pulley, because I'm sure you got your dirty you-know-what beaters all over it and probably got grease and whatnot, oil on there. So go ahead and spray that off, that way we don't get a bunch of belt squeal. All right, so I've got the pump mounted back up. I'm gonna go ahead and hook up the lines. I'll hook up the return line first. It just presses on, it's got a hose clamp. The hose clamp doesn't seem to be hose clamping much. There we go. 10% rule. You guys know what 10% rule is? 10% rule is you gotta be 10% smarter than the piece of equipment you're working with. Sometimes I fail at that. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and hook the pressure line up. There we go. So our pressure line's hooked up, return line's hooked up, pump's mounted to the block. All we gotta do is fill it, put the belt on, and start the car. All right, so make sure you get your belt mounted correctly or routed correctly. Around the crank pulley, around the water pump, power steering pump. Everywhere else you don't need it, and this is not cooperating. Oh, this is fun. Do that some more. Yeah, I like that. You like that? Belt's back on? Nice. All right, now that I've topped off the power steering pump with fluid and dumped most of it all over the header and engine, we're gonna go ahead and start the car and let the shop fill up with smoke. All right, with the engine running, you're gonna go ahead and turn the steering wheel back and forth a few times to bleed any air that may be in the system out, and then recheck your fluid level. All right, we've got the pump installed, we've got it bled, full of fluid, everything seems to be running right, no leaks. One thing I do want to add for you Mopar A-body guys, when you're doing a Magnum swap, if you grab the pump out of a van, the power steering bracket, the pump sits just a hair lower than a truck pump does, and it will clear the battery tray. I ran into that problem when I first put this together. This engine was actually out of a Jeep Cherokee. Same thing, the pump sits higher on a Cherokee as well as the trucks do. But if you grab a van power steering pump bracket, the pump will hang low enough that it'll clear your battery tray. So that's just a little bit of knowledge for you Mopar guys. But that's it, we're good to go, I'm done. I'm gonna go ahead and enjoy driving this car for a little bit longer till I get that new engine put in this thing. This is a hybrid, burns oil, antifreeze, and fuel. So, but it does get looks and comments everywhere I go, so I enjoy beating the crap out of this car every day. But thank you for tuning in for another episode of Meets Rod Shop. Again, I'm Jason. I appreciate it. Have a good day. Remember, keep your head up and your sticks on the ice.